regardless, I want to be sensitive to some people. So if at any point I say something that you disagree with, feel free to leave a comment down below or to unfriend me if you'd like. But I do want to let you know that I am not, in this video, I am not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about the founders of this movement, and I'm talking about the original intent of this movement. So that being said, what I gathered from my study is that Black Lives Matter does not represent me. Black Lives Matter does not represent black men in America. So why do I say that? I spent upwards of 48 hours worth of looking onto just this specific website. Their legitimate website where it talks about their co-founders, what their co-founders believe, why their co-founders started this whole, movement to begin with. And it's kind of shocking what I found. So I'm going to go with two main defenses. Number one, nowhere does their website talk in a positive light about black men in America. Think about that for a second. Other than Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown, they don't even talk about any of the other shootings. I went on there trying to be as unbiased as possible, just looking at what they presented. What does Black Lives Matter have to say about me, about my life, and how I matter? So I went on for me. And what I found is pretty much the opposite. But don't take it from me. Here are a few of the quotes that are actually on the website. Now, most of them aren't really saying that my life doesn't matter. They're dismissive of black men. They want to talk primarily more about the LGBTQ and women, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that talking about those are a bad thing. But they don't talk about me. So our first quote is coming from the bio of one of the co-founders, Alicia Garza. It's Alicia Garza. Quote, "Most important, as a queer black woman, Garza's leadership and work challenge the misconception that only cisgender black men encounter police and state violence. While the tragic deaths of Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown were catalysts for the emergence of the Black Lives Matter movement, Garza is clear. In order to truly understand how devastating and widespread this type of violence is in Black America, we must view this epidemic through the lens of race, gender, and sexual orientation and gender identity." Now, there is nothing wrong with that sentence. They want to spread this Black Lives Matter movement to not only cisgender men. And yes, there are people besides cisgender men who are targeted for police brutality. I would agree with that sentence. But as I was reading that, I saw other quotes in other parts of the video that emphasize more on the LGBT community and women than they do about the individuals who kind of were the catalyst, as it said in her bio, for this. The fact that on the website, instead of saying his story or black story or whatever, it says her story is kind of telling. The catalyst for this movement was Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown. Why are we talking about her story? Shouldn't it be Trayvon Martin's story? Shouldn't it be Mike Brown's story? But let's keep on going. As organizers who work with everyday people, Black Lives Matter members see and understand significant gaps in movement spaces and leadership. Black liberation movements in this country have created room, space, and leadership mostly for black heterosexual cisgender men, leaving women, queer, and transgender people and others either out of the movement or in the background to move the work forward with little or no recognition. To maximize our movement muscle and to be intentional about not replicating harmful practices that exclude so many in past movements for liberation, we made a commitment to placing those at the margins closer to the center. Now, there's nothing wrong with attempting or wanting to put women or the LGBTQ community in places or positions of, prominence. But this next quote that I'm going to read to you on their "What Do We Stand For" section is kind of telling about how this is trying to remove men of color and primarily just men out of positions of power. We build a space that affirms Black women and is free from sexism, misogyny, and environments in which men are centered. Sexism and misogyny, obviously you want that out. But for a movement that is talking about the enslavement of a group of people whose primarily male figures were stripped of their leadership roles, removed from their families, it's odd that you would not want, and I quote, environments in which men are centered. For a movement that was started by 2 Black men being gunned down by the police, why in the world would you not want Black men's voices to be somewhere in the center, if not the center to begin with? This is on their "What We Believe" section on their website. Go ahead and look it up. Read through the entire thing. What this is saying, ultimately, is that they do not want men's voices, which men also does pertain to Black men. They do not want men at the center of this discussion, at the center of this movement. That means me. And if you're an African American male, that means you. Now, note that might not be the case for you, but this is on their website. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some intern built this website. Maybe that's not exactly what the founders were saying. So I looked at their TED Talk. Now, if you don't know what a TED Talk is, a TED Talk addresses primarily what an opinion, a product, what the creator of that product or the holder of that opinion or the leader of that movement believes, what it stands for, and why people should support it, or why people should be against an opinion, idea, or product. So I sat there for the 16-minute long video 3 times to make sure that I had missed nothing. And not once do they address Blacks being shot in America by police. Not once do they talk about Black men at all. Not once. What am I getting at with this? From what I observed from their website, from the founders directly, the creators of Black Lives Matter, they don't talk about me. They aren't addressing me. They aren't saying anything for me. And if you're a Black man in America, they aren't really saying anything for you. Go ahead, the information's all there. You can look it up and tell me if I'm wrong. That's what I want this show to be about anyway. So, do your research. This was more of a low-hanging fruit video. As we progress forward, we'll get more into some of the more difficult topics. Some of them will be opinion pieces. Some of them will be like this, where I do some research, I do some hard digging, and hopefully I continue to say this with love and respect. That's what I want to do with all these videos. It's constantly not attacking a person, but addressing an idea. Anyway, this has been Rational the Radio. I'll see you guys in the next video.